Tell him, McCluskey. Tell him what time it is.
Little Hen says it's time to rock and roll.
All you people are so scared of me.
Come quietly or there will be trouble.
Man, that's just me.
I'm Batman.
This is Sparta!
There is a tiger in the bathroom!
I'm an excellent driver.
If it bleeds, we can kill it.
Pop quiz, hot shot.
Keep the change, you filthy animal.
Arthur, who pinched me?
Guilty. You're irresistible.
Yes, very amusing, Invisible Man. Hello, great to see you.
Hello and welcome to this week's Monday Movie Show. Yet we are brilliantly late, and I had all this stuff worked out in my brain about how I was going to introduce the show, but because the fact that we're so late and all that stuff, yeah, it's not going to work. I was going to do sort of like a Sesame Street kind of thing, that this week's episode is brought to you by the letter C, with me having a cold and you having a catastrophe.
Yeah.
And number 7, considering that's how many films we're potentially having a look at on this week's show. So, yeah, at least I used it there, and as you can tell, I've had a cold and Andrew's had a catastrophe.
Yeah, it's been a terrible thing this week. I've basically had my PC died on me last week, so I've had to get a new one and be setting it up and everything, and I forgot how much of a pain it is just doing all that, setting up a Windows and everything, and all the software, putting all this stuff on you need, and everything you're just normally used to using, and still some of it's not there and working properly, so...
Yeah, I had sort of like similar problems a few weeks ago when my Windows corrupted and just went, nope, I don't want to work at all anymore, so I had to fully reinstall Windows, and so I had that part of the pain, but not the pain where I had to set up a brand new PC and spend a couple of £100 and get a new one.
Yeah, and switch over hard drives, and I've still got to actually take it apart and switch over the DVD drive now as well.
I've got an external DVD drive because my DVD drive on my computer does not want to work. So I use an external one. So that's the best thing about working in a retail shop where you have electronical items.
Yeah.
So that's a plus point for me. Anyway, we're not here to talk about all that stuff. We're here to talk about films of sorts. This week's a bit of a lacking week because of last week's Spectre being released on Monday, which was a Bond film, and Andy is going to have a quick review of that because he wasn't here last week.
Yeah.
So we're going to get his thoughts on that because it's not part of the box office top 10 until the new one's released tomorrow. Check it out on our website, mondaymovieshow.co.uk. But you do have one film that you are reviewing, a new one.
Yeah, Outcast with Hayden Christensen and Nicolas Cage. Nicolas Cage, man.
Yeah, he's got another film coming out on Friday as well.
Yeah.
And we were going to review the Vatican tapes, but unfortunately I was actually sent a screener of it, surprisingly. But yeah, the Vatican tapes has just been distributed in 5 cinemas, and that's it. So I have seen it, so I'll have to keep my thoughts about the Vatican tapes until we review it on Blu-ray and DVD whenever that happens.
I think is it not one of these ones that's getting released very quickly afterwards?
Well, I've checked the release schedule over the next few weeks and I couldn't find it, so it can't be that quick then if that's the case. But yeah, we were going to review that, but because the fact that it's only shown in select cinemas, we're not going to include it in this week's show. On Blu-ray and DVD, though, it's a good job we do have a few films to review.
Yep, we've got the documentary about Amy Winehouse, simply titled Amy. Arnie's back in Terminator Genesis. We have Brit all-star cast in Brit film Get Santa. We have Michael Fassbender in Western drama, kind of actiony, Slow West, and rounding out the night with Krampus the Christmas Devil, not to be confused with Krampus, a movie that's coming out soon in cinemas, but another one, as usually happens.
Yeah, and TV movie of the week on top of that, the UK box office top 10, but do you happen to have any movie news?
I have a couple of pieces of movie news, yeah, I do have a couple of pieces. One is not really movie news, but it is kind of, so I'm going to mention it. And it's a TV series, but it's connected to a movie series in a way. You understand?
I can pretty much guess which one you're going to see.
Yeah, there's going to be a new Star Trek series apparently, according to Paramount, in 2017. Alex Kurtzman is going to serve as the executive producer of the show, who was involved. Alex Kurtzman actually was a co-writer on the 2 J.J. Abrams Star Trek films that have been so far in the current franchise, and also produced them as well. There's nothing confirming what it's going to be about, who it's going to be, characters or anything like that, how it's going to take part, where it's going to be, even when it's going to be set in the Star Trek universe. And there's no idea about actors or anything being mentioned yet. I expect it'll probably be, if it's going to be a completely new thing, they'll be getting probably a lot of lesser known actors to play it, and maybe spearheaded by a particularly well-known sci-fi and aficionado. That's the word. Yeah.
Like that. Aficionado.
Yeah, aficionado. Someone who will be, it's the whole thing of like, with Enterprise you had Scott Bakula brought in, who was from Quantum Leap, and you have a big sort of celebrity science fiction or TV actor that will be the lead, and then surround them with loads of hot young 20-somethings, probably, the way things TV going at the moment.
Yeah, and in a way, sort of like, this might sound the wrong word to use, but grooming them potentially to give them, then be the next crew for the next Star Trek movie trilogy or whatever. After Chris Pine and all of them decide to hang their hats and go, we don't want to play the characters that we're playing now. We need to start afresh with a new trilogy, Star Trek trilogy, with different characters, so why not use the ones from the TV series if it's successful enough?
The only thing I'm hoping they're not going to do is, because obviously we've got the third Star Trek movie that's going to be directed by Justin Lin coming out next year. I really hope it's not going to be something they set up in that with like background characters that then become a spin-off of that, because I think that would be kind of really weak.
To be honest, I don't think Simon Pegg would do that, considering he's the one who's wrote the new Star Trek film. I don't think he would be in that kind of mindset. I think he wants to write, by the sounds of things, he wants to write an end to a trilogy. So I'm hoping that is the case. But I'm all up for watching a new series of Star Trek. Female captain or male captain? I say go female.
I'm not bothered either, as long as it's a good actor and it's a good character.
I would still say go female, because we've had too many male captains now, so it'll be nice to go back to females.
My other piece of news is regarding announcement or rumours that they are going to be having reshoots from website comingsoon.net, that X-Men Apocalypse is going to be headed for reshoots in January. That there's a possibility of the actors being involved being Michael Fassbender, who plays the young Magneto in the series, but that the other one may be Hugh Jackman, who it was not known whether or not he was going to actually appear in the film or not, because of the way his character was left off after the last X-Men film, Days of Future Past. It wasn't known whether or not he's going to return, and also the fact that the actor had said on Twitter earlier this year that he would play the character of Wolverine one more time. So that would mean then, because he's doing a standalone final Wolverine film, that means then he's doing another one if that's the case. I'm wondering if they've done it. They've got everything together, and I think we need Wolverine in there because of the fact of it just feels missing. Yeah.
It's money talks, isn't it, kind of thing. So if Hugh Jackman is given enough money, and this year they want to write his character back into the next X-Men film, obviously he's going to say yes, isn't he?
Presumably whatever he's going to be in, they're not going to have to do a lot of effects afterwards, because it's supposed to come out in May next year, which means they'll have less than 5 months to get it finished.
Well, you look at Spectre, and according to the director, Sam Mendes, he only finished the film a week before it was released.
Yeah, doesn't surprise me. The way things are now.
Touching up some of the sound and stuff like that, which he actually could have done with a lot more time when he to actually touch up the film. But we'll get on to your thoughts on that a little bit later on. Is that your news?
That's it. Yeah.
Well, I'll keep the Spectre piece of news until the end of the news, and then I might as well just see it now. It took 41.7 million in its opening week.
Yeah, it was something about 85 million in the 85 million worldwide. Yeah, which is not bad considering it's only opened in the UK and 2 other countries, I think.
Yeah, a few other countries. Yet it opens in the US on Friday, and so yeah, it should obviously kick The Martian off the top spot, because The Martian has been on there for like the last year. But it's just the box office over in America has been really weak over the last month. Movies like Burnt and Steve Jobs has bombed badly The worst one, I don't know if you've heard of the film Ricky and the Flash.
I've heard the title, but I don't know what it's about.
Yeah, the director John M. Chu, who did Now You See Me, he was sent death threats by fans of the TV series Ricky and the Flash because the film did so badly at the box office. Yet I'm thinking, aren't you the ones who supposed to go and see it?
Supposed to go and support it, but yeah.
So it's your fault, but it's tragic to see that. So yeah, we'll see what Spectre does worldwide box office.
I mean, talk about Spectre. The thing is, when I went and saw it, I saw it at the opening night, obviously, when it was the whole thing of the cinemas couldn't show it on the Monday night until after 7:30 because that was the time of the premiere. And my cinema, which has 18 screens, my local one has 18 screens, it had Spectre on at 7:30, 7:40, 7:50, 8 o'clock, 8:15, 8:30, 8:45, 9 o'clock, 9:20, 9:40. It went on. It had on showings until 11 o'clock odd at night as well, so it must have had, it had it on in at least half of the screens. It was ridiculous. Thing is, more than half of those showings, especially the first 5 of them, which I was in the 8 o'clock one, were completely sold out.
Yeah, my cinema isn't that big, it's 12 screens, but it had something like 10, 11 showings that night, and every single one of them was sold out, even including the final one at 11:15. So the film wouldn't have finished until like 1:15 in the morning, so it's ridiculous. Well, other news that I've got is the sequel to World War Z is finally officially happening, with Juan Antonio Bayona, one of my favourite directors of all time, set to direct. However, it looked like originally that he was going to be poached to do Jurassic World 2, because obviously Colin Trevorrow has decided to say, no, I'm not going to direct it, yet he is going to be involved with writing and producing the film. So they need a director to do that, and Juan Antonio Bayona was top of the list. However, because Utopia writer Dennis Kelly is the one who's going to be penning the script for World War Z 2, Juan Antonio Bayona turned around and went, actually, now I'm interested in directing World War Z 2, so he is staying on the project.
I'm glad about that. I hope that it will mean that, as much as the first one, we know there were problems with it, it had reshoots, and I actually like the reshoot version. I love that last half hour of it. The whole thing of the way that they changed it and added to it. I actually think that was the best way to go. I hope it means, though, that he'll be able to bring that experience to it and go, right, this works, this doesn't work, and be able to throw out what's not needed and just get it done properly this time.
Well, Bayona did The Orphanage, and he also did The Impossible, which I love both. I absolutely adore both of those films. The Orphanage is an amazing ghost story, and The Impossible is such a harrowing character piece.
And the thing is with The Impossible is that what I'm saying is that the scale of it. That is the thing that you need. You need a director who can handle scale for something like this, and he's definitely proved that he can with that.
And the budget for The Impossible was minute compared to what he'll be given for World War Z 2. And so if he's... I wouldn't be surprised if he's one of those rare directors who turns around and says, I don't want a huge budget. It'll be one of the rare occasions when that happens, where a director just goes, nah, a big budget, no, it's not for this film. Give me like 60 million and I'll easily be able to make you a...
I'd like for directors, because it seems to be if a film is made and they go, we've got loads of money, let's just throw it at the screen. I'd love to have a director go, you know what, we've got 60 million, let's try and do it for 30 million, and then if we go into other 30 million, we'll have to. But if we don't, then maybe we'll get something really good out of just doing it, old style or something.
Yeah, he seems to be a director who's able to do that. So we'll see what happens. Other news, Alien 5 has been put on indefinite hold by Fox until at least Alien Paradise Lost is released.
They better hurry up, though.
Until Alien Paradise Lost is actually in cinemas.
I kind of... Did I not say this was coming? This was going to happen? I didn't think it would get to filming stage or anything, because of the fact that just that and having Prometheus at the same time is too much of a risk of confusing the audience. So that I figured they probably would stop one or the other.
Yeah, see, the way I'm looking at it is, at least the Fox is sort of like doing the right thing. They're hedging their bets this time. They're seeing how well the film does.
It's true. Instead of doing Alien and like the Alien versus Predator at the same time and stuff. Yeah,
they're garnering, see if there is an audience out there to see more Alien stuff, and so they'll see how Alien Paradise Lost actually does If it does decent enough at the box office, then they'll go ahead and shoot Alien 5. They'll say, yeah, Blomkamp, there you go and shoot your movie. And now, by the sounds of things, it's not going to be out until at least 2018 now. So we'll see. I'm just hoping that is the case of it, rather than just them going, no, we don't hold any faith in this project. Other pieces of news, I'll quickly go through these 3 pieces.
I've just seen a new one as well, but I don't know if you've got it or not, so I'll wait till you finished.
Billy Bob Thornton has signed on to do a sequel to Bad Santa with a Christmas 2016 release.
I did see this actually. I forgot to note it down. I mean, I'm not opposed to it. I guess it's been long enough that they could probably come up with some new ideas and do something with it. But is it going to be? Is the first one, as much as the first one is a good, enjoyable movie, it's a kind of a one-off movie. I can't imagine it working again.
Yeah, we'll see. Paul King has announced that he will return to write and direct the sequel to Paddington, with David Heyman returning to produce.
All good.
Yep, because we really like Paddington, so more of that, please. Ben Whishaw, you definitely got to get him back as Paddington because it worked brilliantly.
Excuse me.
And the final piece of news that I have is Sandra Bullock will lead an all-female remake of Ocean's 11.
Yeah.
With Gary Ross on board to direct, and George Clooney will return to produce. I'm guessing that was the one that you saw.
Yeah, just saw that, and I was kind of like, remakes. Okay, again. I mean, it has been 20 years or so since Ocean's 11, but Ocean's 11 itself was a remake.
Yep, because the original one came out in the 60s, isn't it?
Yeah, with the actual Rat Pack.
Yeah, so all-female reboot, remake, whatever, reimagining. It's just lots of.
It's going to be Daniela Ocean, is it, or something?
Oh God, we'll see. Whoever else they'll actually get to join Sandra Bullock in that cast there. It's sort of like the Expendables, what they're doing with that, the Expendabellas or whatever.
Yeah, if that's still happening.
That's starting to sound like they're melding with Pitch Perfect, which is not a good thing. UK box office top 10, then at number 10 is The Lobster.
Yeah, really weird, really odd film, but it has got a nice sort of platform it starts out on. The problem is, the second half, it really loses its way and kind of gets lost as it goes from being set in a hotel to being set in the woods. And Colin Farrell is actually really, really good in this, given the role that he's playing, where he's put on loads of weight. He plays a really sort of everyday normal man, and it's a really, really different sort of role for him. But it's an enjoyable, odd film, but at the end of it, you might come out kind of scratching your head, going, "Well, did I watch that? Did I enjoy that, or did I not?" And it's one of those ones that it will definitely be with you long after seeing it.
And number 9 is Legend.
Still in the top 10 because of the fact that it's got 2 great performances and Tom Hardy in it, and really that's all it's got. It's an average film otherwise than that. It's not especially well written. It's okay, but it does need, I think, a bit more work in the writing department. Directing is okay, but average. It's not okay, exceptional. If it wasn't for Tom Hardy's double performance in it, it wouldn't have been doing as well as it has been.
Yeah, I think it's helped by the fact that there hasn't been a lot of strong films released over the last month, so that I think that's helped its case. But you're completely right with Tom Hardy being the shining light of the film. The rest of it is just lacking in a lot.
Yeah.
And number 8 is Crimson Peak,
which is enjoyable, but for me it's not well written for the story. It looks amazing, it's really well directed, it looks great, and it's got some good sort of twist and style in it, but it's more style over substance, I'm afraid. For me, as much as I've not seen a lot of Del Toro stuff, I have seen things like Hellboy and his Blade film that he did and stuff like that. I mean, it's not an action film like them or anything, or a comic book film like them. It is and it's not even really a horror film, but it's a film it really, I think, struggles with its story, and especially in the first half an hour there are lots of too many nods kind of things that you just know what the whole story is before it gets to it.
And I really loved it. And at number 7 is Sicario,
which I liked, but not as much as Denis Villeneuve's previous film Prisoners, which was a fantastic kind of big debut.
His previous film was Enemy.
Enemy, yes, that's true, but I still haven't seen that, believe it or not. But his big sort of film was Prisoner, which is a really good, tense thriller, which manages to more than handle its 2.5 hour running time. Sicario, I think struggles a little bit. I do think again it's down to writing that's the issue, because it is very solidly directed. It's one of those films that's been sort of labelled by the trailers. So if you go into it expecting it to be an action film, it's not an action film. It has a couple of little sparse action bits in it, sort of spits and spurts here and there, but the rest of it is all about the intrigue and the tension and the whole thing of the pensive action built up because of the fact of it's all about what's going on in the story, but it doesn't really develop itself the story wise as it should.
Yeah, I also think that Emily Blunt's character isn't as strong as she's made out to be. I do think that she is she's a female in a very predominantly male world. Specifically, if you look at the film, there's very few female characters in it, and she has to hold the bar when it comes to the female characters. It's just that a character isn't strong enough to be able to do that. She tries her best, but because the fact that she sounds like she's like a sneezing mouse in the background and nobody's paying attention to her, she needs to build that up until she supposedly got enough power behind the character, yet she never fully shows it through the film. It's shot beautifully. The vistas and landscapes and the way the camera flows and follows the characters is fantastically done.
Oh yeah, I mean the opening shot of it is this opening wide shot of a housing estate out in the middle of nowhere, and the camera as it pans along and you see these DEA agents in full tack gear sort of walking through these bushes in this sort of the desert, Arizona desert sort of thing, and that's amazing. Visually it's like, oh, we're in for something here, and unfortunately the story just doesn't live up to the visuals.
Yeah, it's a movie that's trying to be like Zero Dark 30, and it never gets to that tense kind of feel of Zero Dark 30. It never gets to the tense feel that you've got from the opening, because the opening is very dark and very brutal. It never reaches that level, and it seems to be the same kind of problem that a lot of films have been having over the last, I would say, 6 months, where the opening is the strongest section of the film, yet the rest of the movie can't live up to it. Number 6 is Pan.
I haven't seen this. I probably won't until it's out on DVD.
Yeah, you don't want to see it because it's supposed an origin story of Peter Pan, how he got his name as Pan. The opening sequence of the film in the orphanage is quite dark when you've got the airship taking them away to Neverland. It's really well implemented, really well created, and gives you a false sense of security that you're going to enjoy this movie. You're going to be in for a really good roller coaster kind of ride. It's just once it gets to Neverland, that's where the film falls apart badly, because the characters don't seem to be enjoying themselves. They don't seem to be having any kind of fun, and the CGI is so ropey at times it becomes laughable. When you've got them getting chased by these big, huge, massive skeleton kind of birds, it feels like they've just got a puppet on the end of a string and dangling them in front of them. It's that badly done. So it is a bad film. It would have been an absolutely atrocious film if it wasn't for the very well created opening sequence. And number 5 is a new entry for The Last Witch Hunter,
which I'm surprised at how much I really did enjoy it. I've actually seen it twice, and I would happily sit through it again. It's a B grade movie, but it's one that I found was quite sort of filled in depth, and I thought it was not a fantastic, brilliant performance from Vin Diesel, but it was, if you like, sort of fantasy and that kind of thing, you know, sword wielding witches and that kind of stuff, then there's a lot here to like. It is a bit sort of run-of-the-mill in the way the story develops, and again predictable, but unlike things like Crimson Peak, with me, I found that predictable as well, but I enjoyed The Last Witch Hunter more than I did Crimson Peak. I know that sounds really weird because it's a different kind of film, but just it's even, especially, I mean, I went in with particularly lowered expectations, but I just found that I enjoyed it.
Is it a movie that's trying to be more on par with things like Dracula Untold? You know, that kind of thing. It's sort of like a hyper stylized comic book fantasy adventure kind of movie, which predominantly they don't work.
There is an element of that, yeah. The thing I actually liken it most to is the Keanu Reeves version of the character of Constantine, the film one of that, which is a film that I really do like. I really like. It's a very stylized one, but it's one that there's a lot of depth of idea there, and things you know when you're seeing it. There's lots in a frame that you can look at it and you go, oh, there's that, and it tells you things without telling you, and I really like that. I think it's I think that kind of thing is kind of it is kind of like a comic book film, but it doesn't have a comic book origin. It's The Last Witch Hunter is an original story, and that's the thing as well that's nice. It's an original film it's up there with the level of things that have got loads of story behind them, which is what I really liked about it. I just really got into it, and the funny thing is my other half has seen it, and one of my friends saw it with me as well, and both of them loved it.
I've yet to see it. How's Elijah Wood in it?
Elijah Wood is perfectly fine in it. It's Elijah Wood doing the whole kind of Catholic boy, working with a witch hunter who has his own history and he has his own sort of secrets and stuff, so it's that kind of a thing. And it's actually, I mean, it's, you've got him, you've got Michael Caine in there in a small role, and Michael Caine is basically doing the kind of Michael Caine or Morgan Freeman role it could have been, either two of them in it, and it would have been the same sort of thing. It's
kind of raw.
Yes, and it's the one obviously that he's been paid a bit to be in it, but I mean there's lots of other things that he's probably been paid to be in that were worse.
In a way, I'm sort of like, I know it's a new entry in the chart, and I don't see a lot of people going to see it now. I've sort of been waiting to hopefully I might go and see it, but on a night where I know that the cinema is going to be very quiet, because it seems to be one of those movies where I might enjoy it more if I can watch it on my own rather than just be annoyed by people talking and yabbering away throughout it.
Yeah, possibly.
Number 4 is Suffragette,
which is it's an okay film. It's another one kind of like Legend, where you've got a great performance at the heart of it by Carey Mulligan in it, but it's kind of that it's the fact of that it's being set around a character who doesn't exist. It's set around true events that did exist, and it's kind of doing its own thing about a historical story that kind of doesn't work for it. If it had been more about someone who's about even Mary Berry?
Mary Berry's
Mary Berry. Why am I thinking Mary Berry? Mary, who is it? Mary.
I can't remember her name now.
I can't think what it is. But in the film, there is the real life person who was kind of the lead sort of person of the whole pushing the movement forward. That's played by Meryl Streep, but it's the and performance, because the film is decided we don't want to do the story that everyone knows. We want to do a story set around the same time that is sort of showing how the lower class people were affected, and I get that, I understand that. Doesn't work entirely. It's not a bad film. It is a good film, and it's one that by the end of it you'll go, it's a well acted, well done drama. It's lacking that kind of authenticity because of the fact of that it's not a real person in it.
Emily Pankhurst.
Is it Emily Pankhurst? Why am I thinking?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. So it's Emily Pankhurst. I pretty much agree with you on that front. It is one of those ones where I was taken aback by it when I went to see it, because I thought the film was a really good movie, but it is one of those ones where you over-evaluate it a bit more in your brain the more you've actually, when you come out from it, you start to think about it more so. And so then I started to realise, the acting is strong, but the story is quite weak.
The thing as well that I really dislike about it, especially as you go on towards the end, and I don't want to be spoiling here, but at the end something happens to do with a minor character in the film who turned out to be a major person in the role of the whole thing of women getting given the vote. Yeah. And I would have rather it had been all centering around her character rather than a character that's made up beside her, sort of thing. I would have rather it been more about a person who really was there, and not having the made up things of a character, because it just has that lack of authenticity.
Number 3 is a new one for Paranormal Activity: The Ghost Dimension.
I haven't seen this one.
Yeah, it's a series that had its time after the first one. It's sort of like, in a way, people are putting this alongside the Saw series, whereas after number 1, the series itself went downhill, where I don't agree with them on that front, because I think Saw was very strong with Saw 1, 2 and 3. I think as a trilogy that series worked. After that, when it went to Kevin Greenwood and it went away from the the original kind of stuff that we saw. The series itself just went downhill majorly, whereas with Paranormal Activity, this is the 6th movie in the franchise, and it's the final one, the way they said it anyway. It goes out on a bit of a whimper. The last 15 minutes is absolutely insane and just doesn't fit the film at all. When you see it in 3D, you see the ghost dimension. It's very well handled on the first time you see it, but it's one of those ones where it's overkill because it's used about 10-15 times in the movie, and it just dilutes itself every single time you see it, so you lose any of the tension there. And it supposedly ties up the story of Katie and Christy and Toby, their imaginary devil-esque kind of friend, and just feels on pretty much every single level.
So it's the last one before the next one?
Yeah, pretty much, because like I said, it is the 6th one if you include the spin-off one, the marked ones, which was released about 18 months ago, but you have to actually tie that into it because the marked ones ended off where a scene happened in the first one. So it does tie into the series. It's more confusing than the Fast and Furious series, trust me. And number 2 is The Martian.
Yeah, it's still doing really well. I think kind of because of the fact of that there hasn't been a lot of stiff competition since it was released. But the fact is that it's a 12A movie, so it's got appeal. I think people are going back to see it again because they're enjoying it, because it is really well written. It's got a great central performance from Matt Damon, and it's a great visual thing to look at as well. So it's the one that takes advantage of seeing it at the cinema. It's one that the 3D is actually pretty good in as well. You don't need to see it in the 3D, but it does work for a lot of the scenes it's done in, and especially towards the end as the film gets more and more about space and that sort of thing, it really does sort of pay off to see it in that. But you don't have to. It's a film because of the fact of that it's down to story, character. It's humorous all the way through it. It's consistently funny. It's consistently well, and it's a little bit long maybe for some people, but I thought it was fine and enjoyed it. And I've seen this twice as well. And my other half, oddly enough, who really liked Last Witch Hunter, didn't enjoy The Martian.
There's something seriously wrong with her then, because I thought The Martian was a really well written film. Drew Goddard, he's a very smart writer. He knows what he's writing, and that's what's made Ridley Scott direct a movie that is really good, because these last few films has had a writer which is really bad. And so that's what happens when he's involved with somebody who can't create a decent story or decent script, whereas Drew Goddard can do that, and so that's how the film is strong.
Yeah.
Number 1 is Hotel Transylvania 2.
Lackluster, unimaginative. It's kind of like the whole thing of Monsters Inc. again, where Monsters University, which followed it up, had none of the visual ideas and the flares and the ingenuity to it that the first one did that made it so funny and clever. It's exactly the same thing. You have a story which is okay, but then none of the little in-gags and in-jokes that there should have been, that there could have been, that were either set up in the first one, or you could take off them as springboard and go. So they could have done so much more with it. Instead, they've just done a very, very kind of, it's almost straight to video boring of level of what it is. When the first one, I loved the first one. This one, I just honestly sat there and I couldn't wait for it to end because it was just not funny at all.
Yeah, it's sort of like, it's not going to be part of my sort of like headache that is when I come up with best animation film of the year in our awards in around about 5-6 weeks time. That is a scary thought, isn't it, when we do our awards show in about 6 weeks time. Hi, God.
I better start making some notes.
Yeah, I've been working quite smartly this year, and so it's a little bit more easier for me to create my list this year. But the headache for me is animated film of the year, and this is not going to be in there. There is one more movie which is in contention of being in the list. Well, 2 actually, but 1 technically I can't include because it's not going to get a theatrical release over here. But another one I'm eager to see, which is The Good Dinosaur, which is out in a couple of weeks' time, which is Disney Pixar's latest animated adventure. That might challenge the list, but yeah, Hotel Transylvania 2 is a lackluster sequel. Now, we're not properly reviewing it, but Andy's thoughts on Spectre, because I reviewed it last week on my own, and you're more of the Bond fan than I am, and people might have thought that I was being a bit harsh on it because I'm not a James Bond fan, yet I do have that caveat where if you take away the James Bond name from the film, I would still not like the film. I just didn't like the film just because it's got the character of James Bond in it. And if you look at the title, James Bond's not mentioned on the title, it's just Spectre.
James Bond's never mentioned on any of the title of the Bond films.
So that's my point. It's Spectre. That's the title of the film. It's not James Bond Inspector or Spectre and then James Bond underneath it. So just because it's got the character of James Bond in it, I got a lot of hate on Facebook because I'm not a James Bond fan. Yet I didn't like the film even if it didn't have the character of James Bond, even if it was a different name. So your thoughts on the film?
Alright, well, I'm going to say, first of all, I liked it, but I have a lot of reservations about it. I have issues with the story, the pacing. I have issues with Daniel Craig, of all things, in it as well. Because for me, I found he was actually the most distracting element of the film, because at times I just felt as if he was not engaged in the role. I honestly felt as if there were times where he would rather have been somewhere else, not doing the role. And I don't know if that is... One of the things I started realising during it is that it's maybe that he's kind of realised that the role is maybe tired itself, and that's why he's tired of it. So the role is maybe... The thing with Bond is that it's maybe a character and a character base, the whole thing of the 00 series and everything, which is needing to be looked at, being completely overhauled again. As much as they did really kind of bring it up to date for Casino Royale, it's still kind of rooted in that whole thing of, the whole thing of the original reason when the Bonds came out was things like the Cold War and stuff. And it's still kind of a little bit rooted in that. I mean, that's the funny thing as well. In the film, there is this whole thing about, they're going to get rid of the 00s, so it kind of even covers that as part of a story. And I found that it was the whole thing of that it was a convenience of how Bond connects to other things and other characters in the film without going into any spoilers, because I don't like doing that. But it's a thing of that I didn't hate it. I did enjoy it. I do think it's definitely too long. 2.5 hours for this is far too long. It does feel as if you get to a certain point and you think, it's wrapping up to finish, and it tacks on another half hour of a kind of a chase that doesn't really get to a full chase and then stops and nothing happens. And it has one of the most, I think, cynical endings of a Bond film, because it's just basically like kind of, it literally is kind of like, we're just going to end it here and go off and do this. And instead of just going, right, we're ended there, that's it, it goes, and we're going to do this, and meander on for about another 5 or 10 minutes, instead of just letting you get up, wake up your sore bums and start walking out, and you can, get back to your lives. And it literally just kind of goes, we're a Bond film, we're going to keep you here for another 10 minutes just to keep you here for 10 minutes. And that was actually the thing that really annoyed me the most of it.
The thing is, though, I don't know if you felt exactly the same with me, but with the end, the way they did it, it felt like it was like an end of a Christmas special of Doctor Who. When you go that Doctor Who will be back in blah-de-blah.
Oh yeah, I mean they have that.
You were expecting that to crop up on the screen, saying James Bond will be back in Spectre 2.
I think it probably will be at the very end of the credits. I bet it does have James Bond will return. That's always been the staple of the Bond films. But it literally felt like before the credits even started rolling, there was a 10-minute thing saying, we'll do this because of the fact James Bond will return. And it's not even setting up another film. It actually ends. That could be the last Bond film, and it would be a perfect ending to the character, the way they ended it. Which is the thing that's really kind of bugs me about it, because it's a very different ending from the other Bond films ever, and it actually felt a bit kind of wrong. But not just that, as I say, the whole film itself, I have issues with the pacing. And the thing is, it's not Quantum of Solace bad, because Quantum of Solace just rushed through things, didn't set up story as much as it really didn't have one anyway. Quantum of Solace was basically Casino Royale 1.5. But it's a thing is that it's not as good as Skyfall, and the thing is, even for me, Skyfall isn't the best one. Thinking about it, Casino Royale is the best one still. Skyfall's very close to Casino Royale, but the problem is that they made Skyfall then about Bond. It became a much more personal one, which I was fine with. And then they announced Sam Mendes was going to do the next film, Spectre, and I immediately thought, oh no, not again, I don't want another Skyfall. And the thing is, he hasn't done another Skyfall, but he has kept it personal to Bond and that attachment with Bond in a personal way that's different from other Bond films, and it has this whole thing which links into Skyfall. It's kind of, because the whole thing of the Bond films is they're all individual, as much as they are all about Bond trying to take on an organisation like Spectre or other things and such like that. They're all separate films. this feels as more than any of the other films, it feels like a direct sequel to Skyfall. And there are elements in it as well that, as much as if you're a Bond fan, you'll have seen Skyfall anyway. I think if you see this, if you saw Spectre and you hadn't seen Skyfall, you would actually be a couple of moments where you're going, hang on a minute, what? How did that work? You know, how does that make? Who's that? You know, things that are set up in Skyfall that you find out about in this, and it's never explained. I actually think it's a bit of a lazy tack on to Skyfall. I'm not attacking it saying it's a bad film, because it's not a bad film, but it's a very disappointing one for me as a Bond film.
Yeah, I was the one who was saying it was a bad film. If you heard us on last week's show.
Yeah, I don't want to say that.
I didn't want to obviously go on too long. I wanted the show to be quite short and sharp last week, considering I was on my own, and I just wanted to rattle through them. And so I could have spoke about it a little bit more. And I did that sort of in length when I did a special edition of the horror show From Page to Scream last night.
I'm sure Stuart really had a go at you there. Then.
Yeah, me and Stuart spoke about Spectre for about 20 minutes, and at least he didn't lambast me as much as he did on Facebook when I did say, is anybody interested in my thoughts of it? And I sort of in a way shoot myself in the foot. But I just want to be honest. When I review a film, when I look at a film, when I want to be critical about a film, I just want to be honest, because I'd rather actually tell somebody my proper true thoughts about a movie, and rather than me saying, oh, the film is fantastic when I know it's bad, and then they go to see it and they say it's bad and never seek advice from me again. Even if they turn around and say, oh, you were wrong about your thoughts of that film, it's still, at least I was true to myself about the thoughts of it. And I gave Skyfall a second chance. When I went to see it the first time, I thought the film was okay, but it might have just been the fact that I was in the wrong frame of mind, so I thought I'll give it a second chance. And unfortunately for me with Skyfall, the second chance actually made it worse, because when I was watching Skyfall for a second time, I was actually noticing mistakes in the film. And so when you do that, you know you're not concentrating on the movie properly, you're actually just sort of like dipping in and out of it. And so I was noticing mistakes regarding the train scene in Skyfall and stuff like that. Whereas with Spectre, as soon as the Dias de los Muertos stuff, the Day of the Dead stuff, it sort of like makes you think, oh, we might actually be in for a bit of an interesting James Bond movie, because it's not a bad set piece. It's shot really well, the camera flows quite well, it seems to have a few sparks of humour here and there, but it was tonally quite well done. After that, though, it just fell apart, the movie, in pretty much every single aspect, the ultimate one being James Bond himself. It's like Daniel Craig just didn't care to be James Bond anymore, and when you've got your main character, the main actor also playing the main character in pretty much a very mundane way, you've got a problematic film there. So it was just, it didn't make me want to watch the movie, and Christoph Waltz was playing Christoph Waltz. He was not playing a bad guy, he was just playing himself, which he's played in multiple different films before, from Inglourious all the way up to this. His bad guys are very one tone, and that's exactly what he brought with this one. So I treat it like a normal film. Take out the James Bond name, and you still got, in my opinion, a bad movie. It's not going to take a second viewing for me to actually realise the film itself is bad. It only took one viewing, where Skyfall, I think, is a stronger film, even though I didn't like it. I do like it more than I did Spectre.
Okay, shall I go on to the other cinema release this week then that I'm covering?
Yeah.
Outcast, which is directed by Nick Powell, who I've just been looking at actually. Turns out that he is it's his first directed movie, but he is a more than experienced stuntman with well over 100 credits to his name in stunts and second unit directing. But here's his first time directing a film where you have it's following the main character of I forget his name now, Jacob. It was Jacob, played by Hayden Christensen, who is a sort of, we're introduced to him and it's never really explained, but it's sort of taken to be kind of someone who's on the Crusades, and at the start of the film is kind of slaughtering people in a situation where he and his mentor, played by Nicolas Cage, are there, and his mentor is kind of telling him, we don't need to do this, it's over, we don't need to kill these people, and he ignores him in his kind of Anakin Skywalker way that he does, pretty much with any role, and then goes around sorting people, and then that's kind of the opening bit of the film. Cuts to some point later. You have in China the emperor is dying. He has two sons, an older one who is next in line to be king, or to be emperor, and his very much younger son, who is the more peaceful one of the two, and more likely to sort of usher in an era of peace. So he decides, instead of giving the emperor over to his older son, who is kind of a warmonger, he gives it over to his younger son. Older son, of course, not happy with this, kills the father. Younger son has to go on the run with his sister, end up running into Hayden Christensen's character, and have to sort of seek up refuge with him while they're travelling to try and get away from the older brother. We don't have a clip for this, but the thing is, if you did have a clip, because the only clips that are out there are ones of, a couple of bits of dialogue, one of which in particular you would have heard is bad by Nicolas Cage, but all the dialogue mostly in this film is quite terrible, and then loads of noise of rah and punches and swords swinging and hitting and that kind of thing. And it's a film that it feels very much like it's an Eastern made film. I don't know if it's probably made in obviously China and places like that, but it's kind of, it has that feel to it. And the thing about it is, it's a film where everyone's speaking in English, and everyone's speaking in English really badly, and acting, I think, because a lot of people in the film, I don't think English was their natural language, so they're acting in a foreign language, which doesn't help either. And Nicolas Cage is also acting in a foreign language, or it seems, a foreign accent, because he's trying to do an English accent, and it's a very, very bad one, as is Hayden Christensen's, who's kind of this weird kind of middle English between the two, and it's not like trying to do like Cockney rhyming something. It's trying to do just very calm English, and it's horrible. And it's the whole film itself it's weird, because you watch it and you're thinking, this has got great sets, it's got great production value. I don't know how much it cost, but I don't think it cost a lot, but I think what they did with the cost, they made it really work. But it's a terrible film. It's got some laughable moments, it's got stuff where the characters could be really interesting, and you're just kind of going, oh look, action. And then Nicolas Cage, who's missing for the sort of, apart from the opening bit, is missing for sort of the first hour of the film, turns up playing a drunk guy who can't see out of one eye and has long hair. It's Nicolas Cage doing the drunk Englishman thing, and it's just terrible. It's not even, by that point you kind of don't care, so it's not even laughable. It's just, honestly, you sat there and you're going, oh, Nicolas Cage, how the mighty have fallen, what has he done with his career? Because this one is really, really the kind of material that should be flushed down the toilet.
Yeah, you should be glad then, because we've got enough films to review next week. We're not reviewing his other new film, which is out next week, The Runner. He's also got one in the Blu-ray and DVD top 10 called Peer the Ghost.
Peer the Ghost, yeah, I saw about that as well. There was not something else with him last week on DVD as well?
I don't know. But
He's become quite the sort of actor of managing to get a lot of small straight to DVD roles at the moment, and it's not working for him.
He seems to be the actor who's doing that Oliver song, I'll do anything for you, dear, anything. And you can just imagine him bursting out in that kind of role, because as soon as he hears any kind of role, there's mutterings on the grapevine that there's going to be a new Annie. I'll play Annie. So he by the sounds of it, he's just going to jump at anything as long as he's getting paid. And
I wouldn't be surprised if it's a movie where, as I say, I think it's been filmed in somewhere like China, and they've gone, hey, Nicolas Cage, we'll pay you a reasonable sum to come star in this film, but if you come over, we'll pay for you to come over in China and be in like a luxury hotel or something in the meantime. And I bet that's kind of like, yeah, okay, I'll do that.
The scary thought is this has got a bigger release than the Vatican tapes. And considering that it's Halloween, it was Halloween last week anyway, you would have expected the horror film The Vatican Tapes to be shown in more than 6 screens. That wasn't shown in more than, I know it's got Mark Neveldine, who was part of Neveldine and Taylor, who did the Crank series, and Gamer, and the less said about the Ghost Rider one, Spirit of Vengeance, the better. But yeah, they were involved in that, so you would expect that to get a few more screenings than this Nicolas Cage Outcast movie with Hayden Christensen in it.
And Nicolas Cage isn't even the lead role, I'll tell you that now. Here's one of those things where he appears in the opening, disappears for an hour, then comes back it is definitely an Nicolas Cage role.
So yeah, that's cinema releases for you this week, which is brilliant for us when we come up with our movie of the week at the end of the show. We'll take a small little break and we'll be back in a moment with the Blu-ray and DVD section of the show.
There was a real sense of you were doing something wrong, but that did give it that feeling of excitement.
When the reveal of the film happens, that's when it just becomes absurd.
And the atmosphere and just the sense you get whenever you go into it is undeniable.
It did absolutely zero for me, which could be for the hype.
What we've just discussed there is just scratching the surface on it.
Hi, I'm Eric England, the director of Contracted, and you're listening to From Page to Screen, the horror show.
And we're back with this week's DVD and Blu-ray section in the home releases. Coming up, we're going to go through the DVD and Blu-ray top 10 as usual, and then go on to these new week's releases.
Yeah, Asif Kapadia, the director of Senna, brings his documentary style to Amy, the story about Amy Winehouse. Then you have Arnold Schwarzenegger returns in Terminator Genesis, Christmas movie, which was released in cinemas, UK cinemas, last Christmas, and it's now getting a Blu-ray and DVD release this week with Get Santa. Then we've got Michael Fassbender and Cody Smith-McPhee in Slow West, and the first of many, many films about the story that is Krampus, this time with Krampus, the Christmas Devil.
Yep.
And my pencil has just fell on the floor.
And as usual, we'll end out the show with a look at some TV movies of the week coming up, and also our choice of these films. Which one do you think will be the best, do you think? Because I'm telling you, it's not going to be Outcast in the cinema section.
Possibly. It might be.
No, not a chance. Okay, DVD Blu-ray top 10, starting at number 10 with Avengers Age of Ultron.
We're going to rehash a lot of things said with the Blu-ray and DVD top 10 as we normally do, but we've said everything we can about Avengers Age of Ultron. It's good, but that's about it.
Yeah, number 9 is The Lion King.
Disney's buy one get one free still going on. This is one of them.
Yeah, we were talking about this actually, so I guess it has already been released, so we missed it. Pay the Ghost is at number 8.
Yeah, because you were supposed to review it on last week's show and I haven't seen it, so that's why we've missed the review of it. I've not seen it, so I'm not sure what the film's about. All I think I know is some kind of ghost story or thriller with Nicolas Cage hunting down somebody.
Hotel Transylvania is at number 7.
Yeah, the better of the two by a long margin.
Oh, yeah.
This one is probably Adam Sandler's best film in a very, very long time, because he's not actually in the movie, just as a voiceover, and so at least he's less annoying. It's just it's more fun.
And number 6 is Big Hero 6.
Yeah, much better than Hotel Transylvania. A lot of fun this film is.
Yeah. I thought you were going to go on about the whole superhero thing again there, but I won't bother.
No.
Number 5 is Mad Max Fury Road,
which I absolutely loved, and Andrew absolutely loved, and I'll be buying it for myself at Christmas. Not on 3D Blu-ray, just on standard Blu-ray. But yeah, it's such a just joyous action movie.
I got the 3D one.
Good for you.
Yeah. Poltergeist is new entry at number 4.
Which is a pointless remake. It's a remake that brings all the ideas from the original Poltergeist 1982 film into sort of like the 21st century, and sort of like Twitterfies it and adds Facebook to it and Skype and drones and stuff like that, when it just doesn't need it. It's got a few homages to the original film, especially the little girl who puts her hand on the television. But when you get things like handprints coming onto the television again, it's just, this film is sort of like besmirching the brilliance that was the Tobe Hooper, Steven Spielberg brilliant original.
San Andreas is at number 3.
The best thing about this is Sia's song, because Sia, the brilliant singer, she did a song for
Not Sia.
California Dreams. She did her own version of that one, California Dreaming, sorry, and it's a really good version of the song. The film itself is awful.
Is it not Sia?
No, it's Sia.
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 New entry at number 2, just struggling to get in there and not managing to get number 1, is Mr. Holmes.
Yeah, it is that kind of role where Ian McKellen was sort of like, you were probably thinking he's eventually going to play Sherlock Holmes, which he finally does, and they've chose the right actor in, especially the last story involving Sherlock Holmes, and him trying to rewrite all of these kind of stories that his sidekicks actually created. And so it's a really well created drama. If the one part of the strand of the story is a bit lacking, it just doesn't fit the film itself. Whereas the other two strands of the story, I think, work really well.
I'll just say, because I was meant to review it last week, but wasn't able to get on the show. I really enjoyed it, but I did think it was a bit overly sentimental with certain aspects of it, when I thought it didn't need to be.
Yeah.
At number 1, of course, then Jurassic World for the second week.
I don't think it's going to be challenged by pretty much any film over the next few weeks, even though Terminator Genesis is out this week.
Yeah.
I've got a feeling that Jurassic World might still be at number 1 next week. Terminator Genesis might be number 2.
I think Terminator Genesis might just top it because of the fact, obviously, 2 weeks, by that time it'll be 3 weeks, and so anyone who's going to sort of mad rush out and buy Jurassic World will likely already have done it and will be getting Terminator. So.
Well, the week after that you've got Spy. I don't think it's going to be until the week after that where we get a different new number 1, and that's going to be Minions, because obviously that's going to go straight in at number 1. Obviously.
Okay. Let's move on then.
Yeah, first review, Amy, which is as a biography about Amy Winehouse's life, directed by Asif Kapadia, and it is just predominantly about when Amy Winehouse, before she became big, how she just was a normal girl with friends at age 14. Actually, here's a clip which sets that all up.
How big do you think you're going to be?
I don't at all, because my music is not on that scale. The music is not on that scale. Sometimes I wish it was, but I don't think I'm going to be at all famous. I don't think I could handle it. I'd probably go mad, you know what I mean? I would go mad.
So yeah, when she was 14, she had friends, she had a really good voice, and so she was snapped up by a record label when she created her first album. She created her first album that was really successful, and then she created the album that she's more famous for, Back to Black, and that's when her life started to take a bit of a spiral, when she started to get into drugs and alcohol, and it was discovered that she was bulimic as well, so she would eat a lot of food but then throw up the food itself, and so her life started to change dramatically, especially when she met a boyfriend and then turned into a husband, then sort of like divorced from him and turned back into a boyfriend. And it's not giving anything away because everybody knows the story of Amy Winehouse and unfortunately her death. The thing, what Asif Kapadia does with his documentaries is he takes a subject which, even if you're not a fan of, you sort of like find yourself really captivated by it, really interested by it. If you look at Senna, now we're both not Formula 1 fans, yet we found it wholeheartedly interesting, but it didn't make us go out there and seek to watch Formula 1. A documentary should not do that. It should give you sort of like inclinations to find out more about the person involved rather than you going to watch the sport. But yeah, with Senna, it made us more interested in it and Senna's life, and I think the way Asif Kapadia handled it was brilliant. You pretty much don't need to see anything else to do with that and Senna unless you watch Senna. With Amy, he does pretty much the same kind of thing. Instead, what he does is, when he interviews people for the documentary, you never see that person. It's always just a voiceover over some footage of Amy Winehouse, which he's captured over the years from videotapes that he was given from the parents of Amy Winehouse when she was 14, up to all this footage that the paparazzi used to take and hound her life. She was in the limelight, but obviously if you are in the limelight, you're going to get constant paparazzi coverage no matter what you do. You sneeze in the morning, you're going to get a picture taken at you. You do something a bit dodgy, like put tomato sauce on top of some garlic sauce when you're having a kebab, then you're going to get a picture taken at you. So you do the strangest little things. Obviously there's somebody around the corner ready to take a snap because they know they're going to get some kind of coverage. Especially with a destructive character like her, everything that she does is going to be front page news, and it was just the way her life was actually done. And the thing with Amy as a documentary, it works really well. I don't think it's as engaging as Senna is, because the thing with Senna is he wasn't a destructive person at Senna, whereas Amy Winehouse, she brought some of it onto herself. And so she was always somebody who, even though you look at her through the documentary, she doesn't crave attention. You get that feeling that she is craving attention, and so any kind of that she's getting, she's going to latch onto it. and never let it go and believed that's the right thing for her. And her relationships was the destructive nature of her. When she managed to get away from it, she was always craving that life again because that was the only thing she knew. And so when she did do her duets for her last album, which was a very jazz-heavy album, she sort of like was never in the moment. She was booed off stage when she went to festivals, where in the past, when she did Back to Black, she was never booed off. She was always cheered. She was always appreciated. So she was a very destructive person, and so on that front there, the documentary, I didn't feel for it. Yet the way Asif Kapadia does things is he sort of like tweaks at your heartstrings a little bit more than you expect to. So it's a really well created documentary. Not as good as Senna, but it's still very well done documentary.
The one question I have regarding it is because the whole thing, like you said about Senna, is that it's about a person who was involved in the sport and had no interest in the sport, but got into it because the person was so interestingly thought out in and brought out in the whole thing of Senna and what's done. Is the same thing there with Amy? If you don't like Amy's music, Amy Winehouse's music.
Yeah, I don't like Amy Winehouse's music, but you don't even notice it, to be honest. It never grates on you during the film, and so that's a huge, massive plus if that's the case, because it could have been metal music, yet you still would have watched the documentary.
I would have probably been more inclined myself than to watch it.
Yeah, it could have been screamo. Like, I watched Deathgasm over the weekend, and that's screamo metal kind of music. And that, yeah, it's a comedy horror movie, but it's screamo metal music over that. And if it was a documentary about Kurt Cobain, for example, I wasn't a fan of him at all. Yet I would still be interested in the documentary. It's because of the way Asif Kapadia handles his documentaries. He's got a fantastic eye of doing that.
Okay. Moving on then to Terminator Genesis. It's directed by Alan Taylor, who has done sort of things like Game of Thrones. Brings along in this movie with him Game of Thrones alumni Emilia Clarke playing Sarah Connor. You have, though, starting off in the future, the character of Kyle Reese, who's with John Connor. Kyle Reese played by Jai Courtney. And Jason Clarke playing John Connor. In the future, you kind of see the very beginning of everything when, after they manage to take over and defeat Skynet, they find the time machine, which is used to send back the Terminator for the very first film. John Connor then says, of course, Terminators were sent back in time to try and kill my mother and me. I need a volunteer, blah blah blah. If you've seen the Terminator films, you kind of know that story already. What happens, obviously, of Kyle Reese being sent back in time. The thing is that when he gets back to 1986, I think it is the original, things have been changed. Someone has already gone back in time and things have been changed and corrupted even more so than we already know. So the history that we know from the first film is no more. It's been changed, and that's the kind of thing. I mean, it's a whole thing of the you have a new story then of new threads are going on, and won't go into that because that is sort of the last half of the film. But the whole thing is that you have Arnold Schwarzenegger is back playing an aged Terminator, and you have, as I say, Emilia Clarke there playing Sarah Connor, the role that was originally Linda Hamilton. You have Jai Courtney playing Kyle Reese, that was originally forgotten his name. That's terrible.
But I zoned out.
Yeah. But the thing is right. This has been really had a kind of love-hate thing with people. A lot of people have hated it. Some have really loved it. A lot have just kind of meh'd it. And I'm a little bit more in the kind of meh to loved it. I didn't really love it, but I did get into it. I did think it was quite well written. I do think the time story, the whole thing of the time travel, because a lot of films you watch them to do with time travel, you get a headache. I actually thought this one was quite well fleshed out, well thought out, and by the end of it does make sense. As much as some people say it doesn't, I think it does. You have fairly okay performances, but not great ones, of course, with Jai Courtney. Emilia Clarke is okay. Arnold Schwarzenegger is probably the best thing in it, and Jason Clarke is probably sort of that kind of level as well, the best thing in it. You have also popping up in there, J.K. Simmons is quite nice in a small little bit he's got there as well. And it's a I mean, you've got in the Terminator films, as you look at them, you've got Terminator 1 and 2, Terminator 3, which was Jonathan Mostow taking over, I think, and directing it from James Cameron, and then Terminator 4, which was McG, Terminator Salvation. So this is effectively the 5th Terminator film, but it kind of ignores Terminator 3 and Terminator Salvation, and is kind of the 3rd one officially. And it works in that regard. It's a better film than Terminator 3 or Terminator Salvation, and it's okay. If you like the Terminator films, you'll see it. You might be kind of at the end of it and go, well, didn't need it, but it was okay. It's not necessary, but it's kind of that whole thing of a sequel that is worthy. It's not better. It's never going to be better than the originals, but it's actually one that you can go, you know what, I don't mind it.
Yeah, I didn't like it at all, but that's no surprise there, is it? Well, you probably knew from the first time the trailer was released, you're going, yep, he's going to really hate this, and that's exactly how I felt of the film. I thought it was really awful. It piercing, absolutely everything is all over the place. So, yeah, I just didn't like it. Get Santa, which Christopher Smith is the director. Now, if you know your horror, then you'll find it very strange. And a person who did Creep, and Severance and Triangle.
Can I just ask? Is that Creep the underground film?
Yeah, the Franco Potente
one. Yeah,
London Underground one, because there is another one out called Creep, which is about a serial killer who gets followed around by a documentary crew. But yeah, this one, it's Christopher Smith, and the whole reason why he did this is because he was approached with it to direct a kids' film, and so he said, yeah, why not? And so, to say I was apprehensive in going and seeing this film when it was released in cinemas is an understatement, considering that when you watch the trailer, it looks saccharine beyond belief. But with the name Christopher Smith attached to it, I thought I'll give it a try. And so it stars Jim Broadbent, who plays Santa Claus, and he gets arrested by police from trying to rescue his reindeers who've been captured by the RSPCA in a way. And so he's thrown into prison to try because he's trying to break them out. And so Santa Claus needs to try and butch things up in prison, while also trying to get the help of a young kid who doesn't believe in Santa Claus and his father's help, so Christmas is saved. Here's a clip.
So as we speak, Steve and his son Tom are rescuing my head reindeer Dasher, who will then lead them to my new magic sleigh. They will then be able to fly in and spring me from prison.
Well, my first advice is don't tell anyone about this. Yeah, not in here.
Okay.
In fact, I think it might be better if we create a whole new backstory for you. One where you won't end up in a psychiatric unit.
You don't think they'll believe me?
I'm positive they won't. So, instead of Santa Claus, let's pretend your name's, I don't know, something like Mad Jimmy Claus. Yeah, veteran safecracker, bank robber, all-round bad guy.
Mad Jimmy Claus?
Yeah. Do you like it?
I think it's horrible.
Yeah, it's supposed to be. Show me your gangster face.
My what?
Your mean face. If you're going to be Mad Jimmy Claus, you've got to be...
Bad.
Not mad crazy. Just mean.
Mean.
No, mean. Don't ever do that again.
Yeah, and so it is all about this young kid who's played by Kit Connor, who plays Tom, and his father, who's played by Rafe Spalls, who plays Steve, and with the help of elves or a dwarf person who's played by Warwick Davis, and as you heard in the clip there, Stephen Graham, who's trying to beef up Santa Claus so he doesn't get killed in prison. It's up to Tom and Steve to try and rescue Christmas. Now, it sounds saccharine beyond belief, doesn't it? It sounds like, oh my god, somebody's had too many pieces of candy left over from Halloween, and they're throwing up rainbows and My Little Ponies and stuff like that. And so, yeah, just throw that out of your brain, because this is a really enjoyable, family, fun, entertaining film. And this is coming from a person who has a piece of coal for a heart. And so, yeah, I actually really enjoyed it. It is a fun movie. If you've got family around you of different ages, that's where you'll enjoy it the most. When I went to see this in the cinema last year, it was full of families, And so I sort of like felt like the Grinch at Christmas. My heart started to grow a little bit larger, and it started to beat a little bit more, and just it felt like that warm kind of cozy feeling that you got on Christmas Day when you opened up your Christmas presents with your family there, and it's cold outside but it's quite warm inside, and it's that kind of film. It is a perfectly entertaining Christmas movie which goes alongside things like Home Alone. It's not up there with Home Alone, but it goes alongside it really well, that you can just throw it on and be entertained for 90 minutes. So I really surprisingly enjoyed the film. It is a really good Christmas family film.
Okay, Slow West, which is directed by John McClane, who also wrote the film. It is a western of a sorts. Now, it's a weird say to say it, but it's a western set film, but it is, as the title suggests, a very slow building film. It follows the character of Jay, played by Cody Smith-McPhee, who is a Scotsman who has travelled to America in search of his girlfriend that he loves, and has sort of absconded from Scotland for a reason which is explained as the film goes on. While he's sort of running along the way and bumping into all sorts of people that are not necessarily trustworthy, amongst them is a character of Silas, played by Michael Fassbender, who is a sort of an outlaw sort of bounty hunter who he runs into him and eventually agrees to serve as his guide for a daily fee. The two of them then sort of embark, travelling across country, while he is also dealing with sort of things he's doing, while Jay is looking to try and find Rose, his love that has sort of been on the run for particular reasons. And I don't want to say what, because it is a sort of a plot thing, as it's something it's not something that's explained straight away. It's one of these things that you see in sort of flashback as it goes on, and it's a film that, for me, I wasn't a big fan of it when I saw it originally. I do admit that I like it more when I saw it a second time, and it's a thing of it is largely down to the performances, not only of Michael Fassbender, who can always just bring a great performance. Cody Smith-McPhee is also really good in the film as well, and it's the thing of that it's a slow film, but the thing that's nice about it, and I didn't notice this the first time I saw it, the first time I actually found it very long. It's only an hour and 20 odd minutes. It's not even an hour and a half, and yet it slow builds like a western does, and then has a big sort of dramatic thing at the end of it. And I actually, as much as I don't massively like westerns, I used to hate them. I now like them. I now like a select few of them. I still don't like the whole spaghetti western things. Doesn't work for me. This is actually, it's a weird thing. It kind of has this weird musical western thing going for it, but it's not an out and out right musical thing. So it's an enjoyable film. I like it more the more I've seen it. I probably, no doubt, will see it again, because I'll think, you know what, I kind of want to see this, because I'm curious to see if I do see it again, if it will grow on me more. But I have reservations about it because of the fact that it just didn't grab me, as I've heard a lot of people others saying they really, really loved it, really got into it and really loved it. And it's the performances are what does that for me. The rest of the film, not so much. But again, it's not a bad film. It just didn't quite come together for me. I'm glad it's not a 2-hour film. It didn't need to be. But in the same way, that 84 minutes does feel longer than 84 minutes.
Final film, Krampus, the Christmas Devil, directed by Jason Hull. It's a very, 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 very low budget horror film based on the legend that is Krampus. We're going to get Michael Dougherty, who did Trick or Treat. His version of the story is out in cinemas on December the 4th in the UK. And this one just centres around a local police officer who needs to hunt down this mystical being known as Krampus, who is kidnapping children. And that is pretty much the story of Krampus, and pretty much the story of Krampus the Christmas Devil. It's god-awful. Honestly, it's beyond god-awful. If I had much of a voice, I would go into major rant territory, because it is one of those rare films that I've given it a 1 out of 10. It is so badly created, so badly shot, so badly acted, that it is just ridiculous that this film has even managed to be pressed onto a disc. It is that horrendously bad. The box art looks pretty much, it looks interesting, and I think that's where the entirety of the budget was spent. It's like the guy was given like $100,000, which he could have made a decent film from $100,000, yet he decided to just go into the local bar, buy everybody a drink for the next month, spend the $99,999 and all of that, and realise he's only got $1 left, buys a scratch card, wins $10, and uses that $10 budget on this film. Gets his friends to play the characters, gets this guy to dress up as Krampus in pretty much a bin bag, a red hat, and a few little horns that he's managed to find from a Halloween store that's selling everything off for like a penny. And it badly created Krampus Devil, which you need to actually put more thought into it. You need to put more thought into the storyline, and just having stupid set pieces which involve like the film Muck that I reviewed a couple of months ago, where the director was more infatuated about a woman raking through her bag to find different bras and panties to change into for like 10-15 minutes. That's what the director decides to do with this. He decides to lay on her a stripper who's in a bar and has nothing to do with the story whatsoever, and just has the camera focusing on her assets for like 10 minutes to try and stretch the running time. It's horrendous. It would even make these people who shoot these short movies for a university project wince. It would just make them cry, them looking at it and go, God, I hate the genre that I write in, or I hate the genre that I love. Because it's these kind of people who give the genre of horror a horrendously bad name. If you see it on shop shelves, please walk up to the counter and say, can you take all of them down, because that's besmirching everything else that's on here. It's horrendous. It's really horrendous.
Okay, so we know which movie it won't be for you then. It's a movie of the week. We'll get to that in just a moment though. Before we do that, I'll give our quick shout outs we do, which is say of course you can find us on the web at mondaymovieshow.co.uk. You can find us on Twitter at Monday Movie Show. Stuart is on there at Cryptic Tadpole. I'm on there at AHDVD. Find us on Facebook at facebook.com/Monday Movie Show. There are some issues with the updates to Facebook, maybe not working all the time. We're working on that, as we've had technical issues galore at the moment. But also a couple of other sites to check out as usual. Followingthenerd.com, where you have the latest nerd related news updates and things. And also then from page 2 screen, which with 2 the number in the middle of it, .com, which is the site Stuart's. You heard that clip during the show of the horror show. You have the British show that Stuart does, and I mean, how many shows do you do now? 4 shows?
Too many.
Yeah. I don't know how he manages. I don't have the time for one, let alone that many. So we'll go on to, first of all, TV movie of the week. I've just got one, so I don't know if you've got more than one.
I've got 2, and none of mine are on Film 4.
Okay. Well, mine is on Film 4. It's on Thursday the 5th of November at 11:15 p.m. and it's Joe Cornish's Attack the Block, which is a nice kind of British horror sci-fi thing, which it's a very small indie film, but it does a lot with what it does.
With some fireworks in it, considering it's bonfire night, you would expect the Viva Vendetta to be shown on that night as well.
It would be good, yeah, but...
Yeah, I've got 2. So the first one is Looper, which is on Sunday the 8th at 9 p.m. on BBC 2, which we've chosen Looper before as our TV movie.
It is a fantastic film, though.
Yeah, it's a fantastic film. So
and again, saying about a time travel film which makes sense.
Yeah, and the movie of the week that I'm going with, actually Bruce Willis in it played a really good role, surprisingly. But the film that I'm going with as my movie of the week is also on BBC 2. So 2 movies on BBC 2, surprisingly.
No adverts too.
On Saturday the 7th of November at 9:45, Song for Marion. Which,
yes,
yeah,
true.
I really like Song for Marion. Terence Stamp and Gemma Arterton are fantastic in that film, directed by Paul Andrew Williams. It's just a small little British film, but it's just brilliantly acted. Terence Stamp is amazing in the film, and Vanessa Redgrave, who plays his wife, who plays Marion, is also brilliant. It's just everybody involved in the film is brilliant. It's such a warm kind of movie, but also has a lot of truth to it. So highly recommend that. That's my movie of the week, Song for Marion. Saturday the 7th on BBC 2 at 9:45.
Okay, so that's it for this week's show. We'll play you out in a moment with a clip of one of the movies we'll be covering next week. 6 movies out next week. So cinematically, we should have quite a lot more to do than this week. I don't know why some of them didn't come out this week. Obviously, in the wake of Spectre, probably thinking, yeah, we won't risk it. So, movie of the week. I'll let you go first.
Get Santa.
Can I say Spectre?
Pop out.
Yeah, I mean Spectre, but I mean the thing is, Terminator Genesis is more my sort of thing, sci-fi thing. Slow West if you like westerns, but I mean the thing is, as much as I don't think it's great, Spectre is all round. I think anyone will kind of enjoy it except you.
Yeah, except me.
Yeah. So next week, amongst all the things that are being released, because there is Scout's Guide to the Zombie Apocalypse, there's Brooklyn, there's Kill Your Friends, there's The Runner, and there is Burnt, which is the new Bradley Cooper film. It's done horrendously bad in America. It is one of those films that is about food and about chefs and about opening restaurants and stuff, where Bradley Cooper plays the head chef of a restaurant which is hoping to get Michelin stars, as you'll hear in this clip, which we'll play you with in just a moment. Until next week, then, that is us for this week. We will see you next week. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Do you know about the Michelin Man?
It is a book. It is the book, Jana. The Bible.
Michelin sends its inspectors to restaurants to eat and award stars. 1, 2, 3.
Or none.
No one knows who they are. No one. They come, they eat, they go. But they have habits. They have to stick to a routine to give every restaurant the same chance. Michelin Men eat in pairs.
Sometimes the Michelin Man can even be a woman.
They always book a table before 7:30. The first of the pair arrives early and has a drink at the bar. His partner arrives half an hour later. One orders the tasting menu, the other one a la carte. Always. They order half a bottle of wine, they ask for tap water, they wear business suits, they're polite. But, attention, they may place a fork on the floor, under the table to see if you notice. And they wouldn't drop it, because that could make a noise and make it too easy.
Everything from now on must be perfect. Not good, not excellent. Perfect.